To find the foster parent policies and procedures, you're going to go to summitkids.org. Once you're there, you're going to head over to the Resources tab, go to Caregiver Resources, and scroll all the way down to Foster Parent Policies and Procedures.
Administrative accessibility. This policy and procedure explains that there is an administrator available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to answer any urgent concerns. It also ensures that we have a 24-hour hotline and on-call staff at all times. Client consumer grievances. Our hope is that you don't find yourself feeling the need to file a formal grievance at any time. However, if you do, this policy ensures the process for that. If you do file a grievance, you will first be asked if you followed the chain of command. So the chain of command consists of the worker, the supervisor, the department director, and on up. So always start with your worker if you have a concern. Complaints involving race, color, national origin in the foster care adoption process. This policy is specific to complaints alleging discriminatory acts based on race, color, or national origin. These complaints may be filed within 2 years of any occurrence, and it is processed by our Civil Rights Coordinator and investigated by the state. The Indian Child Welfare Act, also known as ICWA. This is based on federal law and requires that we assess throughout the life of a case whether a child has Native American history. If a child is determined to be a recognized member of a tribe, then the tribe has the ability to be involved in the decision-making process as they have jurisdiction of the child. Multi-Ethnic Placement Act, also known as MEPA, is a non-discrimination requirements, individualized child assessment, and home study process. MEPA lays out a very clear race, color, and national origin cannot be used in making placement decisions. You, however, can specify the race, color, or national origin of any children that come into your home. Alternate care arrangements and drop-in respite care for children in custody. We ask that you have 2 alternate caregivers available to assist with childcare. You will need someone who is available to assist during the work and school day to assist with visits or children who can't attend school because of illness. Also be reminded that newborns don't attend daycare until at least 6 weeks of age. All alternate caregivers must complete a local background check and sign the discipline policy. We also run a child welfare history to make sure they have no significant child welfare history. Teens between the ages of 16 and 18 can be used for up to 4 hours at a time. Any overnight care must be provided by an adult age 18 and older.
Care of children. Please, 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 as we've said already, please make sure you refer to these policies yourselves, not only during this training, but even after you are licensed. Look at the policies from time to time just to familiarize yourself with them. This section is care of children, and there's a number of policies and procedures that I would like to review. The first one is discipline and care. This policy outlines the expectations for disciplining children. Of course, no physical discipline is allowed of any type. We also don't deny any type of casework services, visitation, or communication with the family as a means of discipline or punishment, things that we do not do. Next, under care of children, is education and socialization of children in our custody. All of the children in our custody, they attend public schools, no homeschooling. Even if the foster parent chooses to homeschool their own child, a foster child must attend public school. You can send children to a private school, but of course that has to be at your own cost, and it has to be at the approval of the agency as well as the birth family if it is religious based. Children should participate in school and community activities and learn skills that will help them to become self-sufficient. So whatever you do as a family, we ask you to allow the child to participate in those activities as well. Also on this policy, we list some of the reimbursements. For school pictures, we expect foster parents to allow a child to take school pictures every year, and the agency will reimburse you for those if you provide us with a copy of a photo of the child. Educational needs of children. The agency is expected to have children enrolled in school within 3 work days or as soon as possible. Foster parents are asked to attend any activities that a child is involved in, school activities, any extracurricular activities. If you're involved as a family in any activities, we ask you to also include the child. If a child receives any sort of disciplinary action in school, we ask that you notify the agency within 24 hours. Meals for children in the custody of the agency. Children are to be provided 3 well-balanced meals plus snacks at regular intervals. Of course, if a child is school age, at least one of those meals would happen in the school. But during summer and weekends, and when a child is home with you, we would like for the child to get 3 well-balanced meals. They should be offered the same food as other family members and eat with other family members. Now, if a child has special dietary restrictions, of course, we ask foster parents to follow those rules. And of course, as everyone knows, no bottle propping for those little ones who are still sucking a bottle. Religious and spiritual beliefs. Children in custody have a right to follow their beliefs and faith while in custody. We ask foster parents to provide opportunities for the child to practice or participate in their religion. No forcing or coercing a child to participate in your particular religion or faith. A child cannot be baptized, christened, dedicated, anything like that. Cannot require treatment that is opposed by a child's religion. Sleeping arrangements for children in foster care. Children over the age of 1 should not share a room with an adult without prior approval. Children 5 and older must have separate rooms based on gender. Boys with boys, girls with girls, the exception being a minor parent. Having a foster child in the home shall not displace any family member from a bed. No more than 4 children per bedroom. Bunk beds must have a rail, and a child must be at least 6 years old to be on the top bunk. Beds must be permanent beds, no trundles. Cribs must be manufactured after June 28, 2011. For any beds manufactured before that time, those are not permitted. Travel authorization for children in the custody of Summit County Children's Services. Foster parents are encouraged to include foster children and travel with your family. In Ohio, you can travel for 3 days without permission as long as the child is not missing school or visits with family members or significant others. Longer than 3 days and out-of-state travel, birth parents must give consent. A lot of times parents are pleased that their children have the opportunity to travel. However, occasionally they may deny that, and at that time we ask you to make alternate arrangements for the child while you are away. Coordinator responsibilities. Assessment of allegations of child abuse or neglect in a caregiver home. Allegations of abuse and neglect in a foster home are assessed by our intake department by a specialized unit. The coordinator cannot take the lead in any of these complaints. They can provide support, but they do not handle the assessment. The assessment is mandated and handled the same as any other abuse, neglect complaint that is received by the agency. Contacts with caregivers by the foster home coordinator. After you are licensed, your coordinator will make a visit in the first 30 days. One of the things we will do at that home visit is discuss the individual training needs assessment with you. Individual training needs assessment we usually refer to as the ITNA. By policy, we must visit your home at least every 6 months. However, our practice is usually about every 3 to 4 months. At each of these home visits, your coordinator will review the training. We'll discuss current and past placements, how a child is adjusting in your home, how you are adjusting to the care of the child. We will assess your growth and development as a foster family. If there are any resources or services that you think the child is in need of, we will discuss those. We'll provide support, answer any questions you might have, and also discuss the ongoing use of your home. We'll complete a safety audit, parental notification of significant incidents involving children in Summit County Children's Services custody. Our agency must keep parents informed of significant events such as accidents, suspensions, illnesses, if a child runs away, which we refer to as absent without leave. Any of those incidents, we ask you to report to us as soon as possible. Recertification of foster homes. License and home study are good for 2 years, at which time they may be renewed. This policy provides the timelines in which we must notify you of the need to renew and the timelines for your response. Paperwork and interviews are updated at the time of recertification. Training and paperwork must be completed timely in order to renew. Rule violations for Summit County Children's Services family foster care. When rules are not followed, they are cited and documented, and a corrective action is put into place. This lays out the timelines for resolving a rules violation and the process for documenting it. Financial responsibility. We do recognize that it is expensive to raise children, so we have some reimbursements in place to offset some of the costs. The first one is the board rates for family foster homes. All of our foster homes receive a board rate for each child that is placed in the home. And if you have 3 children from the same sibling group, we put extra money into the board check to help with the costs and expenses. Another thing we do is clothing for children in custody. When children first come into custody and go into a foster home, there is a clothing, used to be a voucher, now we call a clothing debit card, so that the family can use that to get the children any clothes that they need. And also for school, we reimburse for school uniforms if a child in your home happens to attend a school that requires uniforms.
This next section of policies and procedures is called licensing rules and home study assessment. The policies in this section take you through the process and timelines from inquiry to application to licensure. The first one we're going to review is application home study falsification. Basically, this policy and procedure explains that if you falsify anything on your application or provide false information throughout the licensing process, that we will stop the process and not move forward and license your home. Foster care and adoption, home study initial application. This policy and procedure outlines who can apply, how you apply, and the timelines involved. Once your application is accepted by the agency, it must be completed within 180 days. We would also like to stress that Summit County does not do adopt-only home studies unless we are doing an adoption-only home study for a child that is already in the custody of the agency or in permanent custody of the agency, and the family that is doing the adopt-only home study knows the child and is interested in adopting. The next section of policies and procedures is dental and medical. There are specific mandates about how often a child should be seen. Policy and procedure, health care for children and substitute care. The agency is responsible for the cost of all medical care for children that are in agency custody. All of the children must be seen at Children's Hospital. They are to be seen for a medical screening in the care center no later than 5 days after placement. The only exception to this is a newborn who is coming right from the hospital, or any child who has recently had a hospital admission. A full physical should be completed no later than 60 days after placement at Locust Pediatrics or the Adolescent Care Center at Akron Children's Hospital. Children will be seen for well checks as directed by the doctor. Once a child has been through the care center and had the initial physical at either Locust Peds or the Adolescent Center, you can utilize a CHIPA office. Children 3 and older should be seen for a dentist appointment no later than 6 months after placement and every 6 months thereafter. You should share summary visits from all of the providers with the worker for the child of record. The next policy and procedure is medical emergencies for children in custody. If a child is having a medical emergency, call 911. Once the situation is under control, please contact our hotline at 330-434-5437 to notify the agency of the medical emergency. Psychotropic medications for children in custody. Summit County Children's Services reviews and approves the need for all psychotropic meds for children in custody. Children in foster care are prescribed psychotropic medications at a higher rate than other children. If children under the age of 6 are prescribed psychotropic meds, parental consent is required. Providers send the required form to the department director, social services director for review and approval. This next section of policies and procedures is placement. Placement and termination of children in Summit County Children's Services custody. When children come into custody, we strive to place them in the least restrictive setting possible. That means we first look for family and close friends, and then we would go to foster care. We complete a placement tool or a checklist that assesses the children's need. Whenever children come into care, you should receive a copy of that placement tool. If children tool level 1 or 2, we place in our own foster homes. Anything over that goes into therapeutic foster care. The next group of policies and procedures we're going to highlight are role of the caregiver. Caregiver maintenance of records for children in agency custody. Foster caregivers should maintain a record on each child placed in their home, including the individual child care agreement, all school information, medical information, social worker contact information, and lifebook information. Lifebook information are items such as report cards or school pictures or photos of the child participating in any sporting events. This lifebook and all of the documentation that you gather goes with the child when they leave your home. Contact with children in substitute care and their caregivers. Face-to-face contact with children in the foster home is mandated by state rule. Children should be seen within the first week of placement and again in the first 4 weeks of placement. Children are then seen monthly in the foster home. If you are a 2-parent home, each caregiver must receive at least 1 face-to-face contact in a 3-month period. Children will be interviewed by the social worker alone, and they should also see the child's room. Normalcy, caregiver, reasonable and prudent parent standard. This policy ensures that children participate in age-appropriate, typical childhood activities and experiences. This policy lays out the factors that should be considered in making decisions regarding a child's participation in activities. Example, maturity, developmental level, and risk factors must all be taken into account when deciding whether a child can participate in an activity. Please refer to this policy and procedure on the website, as it will give you some specific examples of how to make those decisions. Notification required by caregivers to Summit County Children's Services. This is a policy and procedure that is often results in rules violations, so please pay particular attention to this one. It is the foster parent's responsibility to inform Summit County Children's Services of changes or circumstances affecting the placement of children in their home. The state gives specific timeframes on when notification must be made. This includes things like change in occupancy of your home. It has to be made within no less than 24 hours of that change. If you're going to move, we must know before you move, and then have rules about when we must be in the home after that. Please again review this, because this is the most commonly missed policy and procedure. Transportation of children in custody by the caregivers. All adults who transport children must have a valid license and less than 8 points on your license. We do annual checks on families' license to make sure that they have less than 8 points. You must also always have valid insurance. You should notify a coordinator within 24 hours of any traffic violation or once you have 6 points accrued on your license. There is to be no transportation of children on motorcycles. You must use child restraints based on state law. Mileage is reimbursed for agency-required activities such as medical appointments, WIC appointments, family visits, and counseling. It is reimbursed at the IRS standard rate. Mileage must be turned in monthly to your coordinator, and we will not reimburse anything over 90 days old. The forms for mileage reimbursement can be found on our website.
Site and safety. A safety audit is required in order to have your home license and quarterly thereafter. In a safety audit, we look to make sure that you have operating fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. Foster parents are permitted to have weapons, but they have to be kept in an inoperable condition and locked up. We also look if you have swimming pools, that there's a barrier on all sides, that bleaches, chemicals, other cleaning products are kept out of reach of small children. There's a number of things that we look for in safety audit, but the assessor or foster home coordinator will help you through those things. Foster parent training, continuing training, extensions, and waivers. Currently, there's a set amount of hours that must be taken in order to recertify after you've been licensed for 2 years. We do offer classes at the agency, as well as foster parents have the ability to complete hours online. We encourage families to complete at least 20 hours in their first year. Your coordinator will complete an individual training needs assessment, as I just spoke about a little bit earlier. It's essentially a training plan. It's a review that we will go over together at each home visit. You must be trained in infant, child, and adult CPR and first aid, and that training must be kept current. Extensions are offered only for those that are away from home on active duty with the military. If you do not complete your training hours, your license will expire.